Good morning. It is the 24th week of 2026, June 8th, Monday morning at 6 a.m. This is Flow Chaser Monday, and I do this presentation every Monday here in 2026 at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to really present a theory on accessing the flow state, especially how it relates to our work. Mondays are so important to me because it's really the mind frame and the mindset of the work that is going to be produced and why I'm doing the work. And so that is what Flow Chaser Monday is all about. The plan for this format, this presentation is I'll talk a little bit more about why I'm doing this video, who I am, very, very short bit. Before I talk about chasing flow, I find it really helpful to preface it with like kind of the opposite vibe, which is burnout. Something a lot of us may have experienced multiple times. Maybe it's something that you're currently in, and how that flows into the idea of chasing flow, as opposed to, I feel like burnout is really from this idea of like chasing goals, and how those two things are different, how chasing flow and chasing goals are different. And this is important for you to know on a Monday morning because it can really change the flavor and the quality of the time that you're spending during the work week or any time. Okay, so there's nothing I have to sell. This is purely for funsies. It's a presentation that I've been practicing every Monday here in 2026 as a effort to get better at one presentation. I'm making small little improvements each week, and it's just to see the collaborative showing up consistently and seeing what happens to a practice. And interestingly enough, repetition is a flow trigger. So the more that I participate in this, the more it's just kind of like flowing out of me, and I'm getting more concise and hopefully better at this. So about a 30-minute lecture last week, it was about 23 minutes. So I seem to be just like zipping by this. We'll see. All right, so who I am. This isn't going to be detailed, but in my normal professional life, I'm a brand and web designer. I work with mostly service professionals. I'm also really into my hobbies. I like making sourdough bread. I'm just getting into like pickling things. I knit this sweater. Yes, I'm really into like granny hobbies. Um, I've been a working creative for over 10 years. And I feel like that is an important nuance to this conversation about chasing flow. I'm also somebody with pretty inconsistent energy patterns because I'm highly sensitive. So something comes in and I really like feel things. And again, this is important for chasing flow because goals ask for consistency and flow asks for engagement. But it doesn't mean just because I have like inconsistent energy patterns that I'm any less motivated than the average person. I am somebody who has a ton of personal and professional goals. All right, now we get into the fun stuff, or maybe not so fun stuff. Let's talk about burnout. All right. So burnout really starts with a high capacity person. And what I mean by high capacity person is this is not the person who, when you have a party, you ask, oh, just bring napkins or something. This is the person who's like bringing the main dish. This is the person who other people recognize as being able to produce, be able to do the thing that makes them like a high capacity person. So, because the person is able to do the thing and then they're given praise or maybe resources, a job in order to do the thing, we want to be able to like do the thing more, like produce the thing that gets the carrot, right? However, if that thing that gets the carrot is not connected to our souls, the intricate wiring of our own brains and our personalities, we get this disconnect of we're doing all this things, this effort, and yes, we're being rewarded or compensated for it, but there's a disconnect of we just don't feel connected to it for whatever reason. Maybe it's too easy. Maybe there's like other personalities involved that just get you kind of like knocked off your rocker. Maybe it's because your brain is just fascinated with something completely different, but it's prioritized doing the thing that gets the reward instead of going and finding the thing that it's incredibly interested in. And because of that disconnect, you get burnout, and that is heavy, and that feels wearing and draining. And I was just thinking of the end of my burnout. It just feels like, why? Why bother? Why do all this stuff? And so, because that is so painful, we tend to, as humans, create these unconscious filters. Maybe that's like many cups of coffee. Maybe it's a lack of focus when we sit down and work. All of these things are signs of burnouts, like use of more substances, more zoning out, less engagement in what you're doing. And that unconscious part of burnout is probably the furthest away from like accessing the flow state that you can possibly be, because in that unconscious it's there's not a lot of curiosity, and flow state does have this curiosity peak. So let's go into chasing flow. The theory is that you can come out of burnout by chasing flow, which is different than chasing goals. And the reason that it is different is because that it uses alignment as a flow trigger. So in this part of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what flow is, your brain on flow, preview, free drugs, how to chase flow. I have this wonderful formula from Bashar that I believe is the gold standard for how we can actually chase flow in our day to day lives. Can't wait to share that. And then how creativity and adaptability really are hallmarks of this ever changing flow state that we can knock into and knock ourselves out of, and how radical self acceptance and alignment as a flow trigger is just chef's kiss for how to start to repattern yourself from those patterns of burnout into a pattern of excitement and curiosity. So let's go. Don't we need that on a Monday morning? Like, this is how you've usually chased goals, and this is how you chase flow. So, my conceptualization of flow, and I know that we all as professionals have been shown this like flow studies because our bosses understand that flow is a very highly productive state. I've heard this one quote that if your employees were in the flow 8 hours on Monday, they wouldn't have to work a single day for the rest of the week to be as productive as somebody who like didn't access the flow state. I don't know if I believe in that, but here's this conceptual model of what I believe flow is. All of us have this comfort zone, and it changes and shifts based on how much sleep we got, how much like comfort and joy and physical um, the needs that are met. So we have this comfort zone, and on the inside of that comfort zone, we as humans can predict with really great accuracy everything that's going on. There's no surprises, nothing is happening that's like, oh, curious. We are completely within our comfort zone. And as we start moving outside of that comfort zone, this is the realm of curiosity. This is, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm relatively secure and assured that it's going to be good, right? So if we're coming out of our comfort zone, and you see this in like extreme sports, you see this in like group events, sporting events, it's almost the World Cup. You don't know if your team is going to win, but when you watch a game or a sport, observing the flow state with the players, with the fans, this hypnotic flow state of I don't know what's going to happen, but then there's complete focus and absorption in what's going on. And then until we hit dysregulation zone. And dysregulation, big word, and it feels like it's probably a freak out, or I don't know if you have small children, but a meltdown. That is certainly a form of dysregulation. But a form of dysregulation, as it comes from like a flow chasing, is anything that just knocks you out of your focus and absorption. And that can be for something as positive to listen to as your own internal signals of like, I need to go to the bathroom, or maybe your excitement on the thing that you're working on is waning. Whatever physical, emotional needs that happen end that flow state. And that is a very natural part of the process of chasing flow, is to come into some sort of dysregulation where the focus and absorption end. And then we can take care of ourselves and maybe get back into the flow state or rebuild our energy for the next high velocity, energetic, mental thing that we're doing. So, why does this state feel so good? This complete absorption, we're not only doing it because we reach this height of productivity. There is a chemical response that is happening in my brain, in your brain, in our brains collectively as we enjoy the flow state. And I say enjoy because flow state, as opposed to hyperfocus, although are those different? I don't know, but like a really good flow state has this neurotransmitter response to the activity that you're doing. These are drugs that your brain is producing for free once you are accessing the flow state, and that's dopamine, norepinephrine, endorphins, and anandamines. And the result is a quieting of the prefrontal cortex. And if you are a neuroscience nerd, you might know that the prefrontal cortex is where a lot of the inner critic lives. It's also the part of your brain that can record and guess how much time something takes. People with ADHD really struggle with the prefrontal cortex, maybe not acting as consistently as more neurotypical brains. And when that dials down because of this neurotransmitter surge as a response to the environment, nothing that's being taken or ingested or injected, this is just like confirmation that this state feels good and that it's something that you can alter in your environment and access. So you can do drugs that work, free drugs, ones that won't pop up on a drug test, by accessing the flow state. But how do we access this? How do we live a life of flow instead of force? I really love the Rilke poem, and he's talking about a river and this concept of no forcing and no holding back, which I just believe is a brilliant analogy for how to find this high velocity flow state. However, one thing that I've noticed talking to people about work and situations where they're able to access this flow state, including myself, what I've noticed is that it's completely individual for each person, which is another reason why I love talking about this on a Monday morning. Because as you progress through the week, as you're working on things, can you start to play around with different mechanisms that get you into the flow state with whatever you are working on? How do you do that? As I said before, I believe Bashar's formula is the best formula for accessing the flow state. And I'm so excited to share this with you. But like, what is Bashar? This might be a little bit more challenging for people to wrap their heads around, but Bashar is this channeled intelligence, alien, extraterrestrial, um, that Daryl Anka gets and is able to channel information through. All right, but here is his formula, and hopefully I can make the connection about why this is the formula for accessing the flow state as a human on this planet right now. First, act on passion first. This is how flow is uniquely different than chasing a goal or crossing off a task. Those things do not ask why you are personally interested and invested. They don't ask for you to have passion about what you're doing or excitement about what you're doing, but flow does. Flow does this. It really forces a person in order to have that neurological response for the time meltiness of things and for this excitement and I don't know what's going to happen. It's passion, passion first, which is also why flow states are so unique to every individual. Number two, act as far until the excitement wanes. Is that dysregulation that he's talking about? I don't know. It's just this waning of excitement, which is a natural process of the flow state. And so, as somebody with kind of up and down focus, this is so important because in the excitement of the doing of something, the finding the flow, until the excitement wanes as just a natural part that the flow state is ending. Number three, act on passion without assumption of outcome. Because again, if we knew the outcome, we would be on the inside of our comfort zone. And what flow asks us to do is to slowly move away from that nucleus of the comfort zone into the possibilities where we don't know what's going to happen. That seems to be a hallmark of finding the flow state. And so, another way that you can internally manipulate this and come into the flow state is to come out into the area where there's questions, there's curiosity. And that, I believe, is what Bashar is saying with this number three, act on passion without assumption of outcome. You don't know what's going to happen. And that's a very good indicator that you are in the flow state and it feels good. You don't know what's going to happen and it feels good. Um, Four, no matter what manifests, stay in a positive state. What I found in taking on these challenges or even group flow is that there are interference of challenges that will come in. Now, sometimes the interference of these challenges will take you out into a dysregulated state in which you need to take care of your needs. You know, the flow state is over, that's fine. But no matter what manifests, stay in a positive state. What I believe this is saying is that as these challenges are presented, to not think of them as, oh, this is a bad thing that just happened, or this is a good thing that just happened. But no matter what happens in that flow state, in order to continue and perpetuate the flow state, can you use the challenges as fuel and greater understanding of like curiosity and the fabric of the thing that you are working on. You see this in sports, you know, the other team just hit a goal and now your team is reacting to the challenges of that new thing. But if you automatically make assumptions of like, oh, that's bad and we can't get sports scientists will tell you, and just like flow scientists would, that no matter what happens in this flow state, stay in a positive mindset. And then five, this is really interesting. Examine your beliefs and release fear. In these flow states, your brain is at this incredible learning, like all those drugs, you are able to learn almost at hyper speed. And sometimes there's things that come up that increase fear. If we let those beliefs bring us into fear, we'll just get knocked out of our flow state. But if you can, in the flow state, examine your beliefs and release fear, maybe of the outcome, maybe of other things that come up, but we're given this state of hyper awareness, hypersensitivity, hyper involvement with our curiosity, our souls, and our passions. And as these beliefs and fears come up, can we let go of them? Can we release them? Or maybe we become dysregulated and the fun stops, which is cool. That happens. Okay, in the flow state, especially in number 5, when we said that there's challenges that are coming in and we are using those as fuels to stay in the flow trigger. Those challenges are helpful because they add a nuanced layer that takes us away from our comfort zone. Challenge, we're just a little bit further from our comfort zone, which means our potentiality for accessing the flow state is greater. So if we are in this flow state and we can see a challenge and accept it with creativity and adaptability, we can extend our ability to stay in the flow state. This is my theory. I would love to know what other people think about this. And a little bit more of like what's under the current of that radical self acceptance and creativity and adaptability. If there is an understanding of your worth, your abilities, your talents, when you go into this flow state, you are able to combat the fears that might come up and the challenges. So, what I love about flow, as opposed to just chasing goals, goals does not ask who you are, your experience, what you're interested in, what your soul is calling for, but flow does. And the baseline belief that I feel really spurs this ability to access the flow state for yourself professionally is that whoever you are, your own soup of talents, experiences, and challenges is worthy of acceptance and support. This might sound a lot like acceptance and commitment therapy. That is super helpful for being able to stay in the flow state without judgment of the things that are coming up, including your own brain, your own situation, your own challenges. Just to say that all these things are happening and I am able to connect with my talents and my interests to respond to this. All right. How do we expand capacity? I think that capacity needs to be understood as this incredibly changing thing that has nothing to do with who you are, your value as a person. Sometimes we all have higher capacities. I love the spoon theory that's talked about with managing chronic illness. This idea that we all have a certain number of spoons each day, and those spoons are changing. Well, our capacity for accessing flow is changing based off of our own internal resources and our external environment. And if we go back to Bashar's formula, we can accept these challenges without and stay in a positive state in order to really access the flow state for longer because we're using those challenges as flow triggers. And I will say this, dysregulation zone is at the end of this, and it seems like it's the bad guy. It's when the fun stops. It is not the bad guy. And I will tell you my own personal experience about seeing dysregulation zone as the enemy instead of the friend and the protector that it really is. Every day, every moment, you have needs. You have biological needs, you have physical needs, you have social, emotional needs. You have so many needs, and they are worthy of being tended to and cared for. If you are somebody who works to a point where your biological, physical, social, environmental needs are not met by you because you are forcing yourself into the work that you are doing, the situation that you are doing, this dysregulation zone will get a lot closer to your comfort zone until it is so loud that you can't focus, you can't do anything. And what you are doing by ignoring the signals of your dysregulation zone in order to manufacture longer in the flow is you're training your brain that these flow states are somehow not a safe place for you to be in. What that happened to me is I started to work and all of a sudden my shoulders would like lock in and I'd feel so much pressure because at one point I would ignore my biological signals. Like I'm talking, I wouldn't go to the bathroom for 3 hours. Part of ADHD is that we hyperfocus. And I think I am confusing a little bit about the hyperfocus state with the flow state. But I will tell you that that lack of trust I've had to build back into my body. So as soon I set timers so that I don't extend that because I know that my mental energy goes in and it's like, what is time? So if I'm doing like a workflow, I'll set a timer. I have water and things that I need by the place that I usually go into the flow state. I listen to those body cues not as the enemy, but as the helper for building greater trust in order to maintain a healthy, biologically beneficial flow state for myself because I know that I have that propensity to not. Maybe you do too. Thank you so much for watching this, whatever time you're watching this. I love doing this presentation because I feel so much more engaged with my own calling for these flow states, for these hyper productive, but also just feel good work. I hope that you can look at your goals and adapt them for manufacturing flow state that feels beneficial and warm and all the right things for you. And that you listen to your body and that you take care of your needs. And with the creativity and adaptability in a flow challenge, I hope that you're able to surprise yourself with your capacity. Have a great week. I will see you next Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.